Welcome back to Conservative American Predictions. Today I'm going to be discussing the 2024 presidential election, and in particular, one crucial state that could determine the outcome of the race. And that state, if you haven't already guessed it based on the thumbnail and title, is Georgia. So in 2020, Georgia was one of the most important swing states. It voted for Joe Biden by about 0.24%, and it was the most narrow state in the country. It came down to only a couple thousand votes, and it's going to be that way again this year. It's going to be an insanely close election, an insanely close race, and it's going to be probably one of, if not the most important states in the nation, right after or right before Pennsylvania. So, as you can see on the map, if you don't fill in Georgia or the 6 other battleground states, Donald Trump is left with 219 electoral votes and Kamala with 226. Now, as of where the race stands right now, this is where I think the states are, not necessarily margin-wise. I'm just going to fill out these states and leave Georgia blank. So, as you can see, I do have Kamala winning right now based on that and without Georgia. So she's at 277, Trump is at 245. Now, again, there are some other states that I think are going to be really important. There's a couple of other ones right now which I'm really undecided on, like Pennsylvania and Arizona. So I'm going to kind of leave it at this for the moment. A Kamala 247 electoral vote margin compared to Trump's 245. And again, this is without 3 of the most important states. But again, Georgia is going to be the main focus of the video. So first thing I want to say is Trump is leading the poll averages in Georgia by 1.7%. And in 2020, Democrats were overestimated in the state by about 1 point. So you figure that then if that same margin of error happens again, Trump is up by 2.7. So we'll see if that does happen. I do think Trump is favored right now, and I'm going to get to that in the later part of the video, kind of discuss that. But again, I do definitely think Trump is favored right now. Things are looking pretty good for him out of the state. And now I'm going to get to some pretty interesting stuff. And this may or may not be true. I don't know how factual this is. Please correct me if this is not right, because I just saw this and I thought it was interesting, so I would include it. However, if I'm wrong about this, if this is not true, my apologies. But as you can see, in 2020, the Democrats on the first day of early voting had 55% of the vote. Republicans had 36%. Now, if you go to today, Democrats have 48, Republicans 45, and the remainder are independents. So, again, if this is not true, my apologies, but that's just what I saw. Now, the next tweet I want to look at, this is kind of the opposite of that end. Kamala has a 17-point lead on exit polls in Georgia's record-breaking first day of early voting. Again, if someone can confirm this, please just let me know. And, I really don't know which side is true. Now, either side, if either of these is true, then that's definitely good news for their respective parties. But even taking away, let's just take away these numbers. Let's just ignore those because, again, for all we know, they might not be true. There's a couple of other things that are pretty important for how Georgia will vote. Take a look at this. This is probably the most important thing. This is the racial breakdown of the voters from yesterday. And by the way, there were 328,000 ballots cast in Georgia yesterday. That is about 6.6% of the overall vote from 2020. That was in one day. So Georgia had some exceptional turnout yesterday. But again, breaking this down. So in 2020, let me actually pull that up. I believe that's shown here. Give it a minute. So or maybe it's not shown on this tweet, but as you can see right now, 57.52% of the votes from yesterday were white voters. 30.01% were black voters. And I don't remember if I bookmarked the other one that was talking about that. Maybe I did. Okay, so I don't know, again, what exactly the number, I think this might be the number here from 2020, 30% black and 57.5% white. So as you can see, that's basically stagnant for the black vote, but then it's a little bit of a tick up for the white vote. And in a state like Georgia, this could be all the difference, as the minority vote in 2020 was basically the nail in the coffin for Donald Trump. It gave Joe Biden the win in the state. It was very, very, very narrow. But the massive amount of turnout you saw with African American voters, especially in places like Atlanta and the Atlanta suburbs, that's what gave Joe Biden the victory in the state. And if it does happen again this year, that's going to be one of the large demographics playing into that. Now, this is a map of where Georgia turnout increased and where Georgia turnout decreased. So as you can see, Georgia turnout increased in the purple areas. So Georgia early vote started yesterday, and the state landed at 6.6% of the 2020's turnout. Turnout was highest in northern Georgia and southern Atlanta, while parts of Gwinnett, DeKalb, Cobb, Richmond, and Cherokee counties lagged. So pretty bad news for Democrats out of places like Gwinnett, DeKalb, and other, Atlanta metro areas as well as Atlanta suburban areas. So yes, southern Atlanta did do pretty well, and that's good news for Democrats. But overall, looking at this map, Republicans are doing pretty well. And, while again, this does seem like a pretty contested map, as some Republican areas definitely lag behind, some Democratic areas definitely lag behind, overall, you see a pretty decent drop-off in some of these areas. So, again, kind of an interesting map, and I don't remember if there's one more thing I had bookmarked to talk about. Oh, this. So early voting is not everything in Georgia, and I do want to point that out. So even if early voting narrows up a whole lot, let's say it is that, I believe, 48-45 number, that is not the end of the world, because if you look at this, if you look at this shows the early voting results in total from 2020, 21, and 22. So as you can see, in 2020, Biden won the early vote 52-47. But if you don't already know, he went on to carry the state by about 0.24%. So as you know, that means the election day vote was not that Republican leaning. Same thing with Ossoff. He was up by 4 points, actually less than Biden, but he did all right in the first round of voting. He didn't do terrible. But then in the runoff, he had a 13% margin over Perdue. He went on to win by about a point. So, again, Election Day wasn't super, super red. Same thing with the Warnock race. Same thing with the Warnock race in 22. I mean, that's a pretty good example right there because, Warnock won by about 3 points, and he's up by about 7 here. So, really not that red Election Day turnout. Same thing with Raffensperger's race. Jordan's race was to an extent that way. And, again, just some of these other margins. So, Georgia early vote is, it's pretty close usually, and election day vote is pretty close too. And that's why you have such a interesting, dynamic in the state with politics and with, how the elections usually go. So, again, with that being said, Trump is looking like the favorite in Georgia. If black turnout decreases at all, basically Democrats are going to have a very, very hard time winning the presidency and holding Georgia. If they don't win Georgia, that is 16 very important electoral votes going in Donald Trump's category. If he wins Georgia, that puts him at 261 electoral votes. And he needs to win one more state, Arizona, Michigan, Pennsylvania, one of those, and he would become president. That is if he already wins Wisconsin and North Carolina, which I think he will. And really, Pennsylvania and Arizona are going to come down to the wire as well. And things have been looking, I've seen some reports saying that things are looking good for Republicans in Pennsylvania. I've seen others saying Democrats are looking good. So I'll probably do a deep dive into that before long too. But either way, Pennsylvania is going to be very, very narrow. And either way, that is going to be one of the most important states too. But if Trump wins Georgia, all he has to do is win one other state. Let's say he wins Arizona. That puts him at 272. If he would win Pennsylvania, that puts him over 270. If he wins Michigan, that puts him over 270. So if Trump wins Georgia, that is terrific news for him. Now, if Kamala Harris, let's say she wins Georgia, then that off the bat puts her at 248 electoral votes. And you take away Nevada and Michigan, puts her at 242. But then, okay, she wins Georgia. Let's say she does win Nevada. Let's say she does win Michigan. That puts her at 263. Meaning she needs to win just one state left as well. So Georgia and Pennsylvania are going to be extremely important because even if Trump wins Pennsylvania in this scenario, even if Trump wins Wisconsin or Arizona, Harris can still win. If she wins Georgia, then that is basically game over for Trump. It's going to be very hard for Trump to come back from that because I think Trump is going to do better in Georgia than he will in Pennsylvania or Arizona. So if he can't win Georgia, then he's going to definitely struggle winning those two states. But again, if Trump does win Georgia, that doesn't mean the election is won for him, as he still needs one other state as well. And as of now, he easily could do that. I am borderline considering flipping Pennsylvania right now. Same thing with Arizona. My next election prediction will probably be a little bit different. That will be coming out in a few days. It will probably be a little bit different than my last one. This race is just tightening up day by day, and it's becoming more and more interesting. This race is really going to come down to one or two states, Georgia and Pennsylvania, and potentially we'll see some other really close ones too, like Arizona, Wisconsin, Michigan, Nevada, and North Carolina too. But again, Pennsylvania and, like I was saying, the main focus of this video, Georgia, they're going to be the states that decide the race. Again, if black turnout drops at all in Georgia, Democrats aren't going to be able to get the margins they got in 2020 in some of these urban counties in Atlanta. They're not going to get a 46.5 point win in Fulton. They're not going to get a 67.5 point win in DeKalb. They're not going to get a 71% win in Clayton, a 20.5% margin out of Henry. They're not going to get these margins. African American voters are crucial in these suburban Atlanta counties. It's so hard for Democrats to win without them. I mean, you go to 2022 when Kemp won by 7%. He did very well in these counties. He was able to turn voters out who aren't necessarily part of the Trump brand, and he did better in these suburban counties. He did very well compared to other Republicans, and he won by a decent margin. If you see anything similar this year where the Democrat Kamala Harris drops an African American turnout in this area, then Democrats cannot win. If they drop just at all in this area, it could be enough to flip the state. I mean, again, it was only a 0.24% margin out of the state, insanely narrow. Going back to 2016, you can see the trend that happened here. I mean, you have places like, inner city Atlanta didn't trend too much, but let's take Cobb County, for example. Cobb was Clinton plus 2.2%. You saw African American turnout skyrocket. You saw suburban, college-educated liberals. You saw former Republicans, kind of traditional Republicans, swing left. And as you can see, Biden won by 14.3%. Another county, Gwinnett, it went for Hillary by 5.8. It went for Biden by 18.2. So massive trends out of these counties, and they don't have that room to grow again this year. And if this is right, if the first day of voting is right, where African American turnout is down at all, and the white share of the vote is up, then Democrats have a serious problem. And that is right now why I am moving the state of Georgia to a lean Republican margin. So this is where I see the map standing right now. This is basically my exact marginal map, if you are wondering. So Georgia is lean Republican. That puts Donald Trump at 261 electoral votes, Kamala at 277. But again, if things do turn around for Democrats in Georgia, definitely is still a pickup opportunity or a hold opportunity for them, and that would give Kamala Harris an additional 16 electoral votes. So it is still possible Harris wins the state, but again, as of now, early voting is looking pretty good for Georgia Republicans. So yeah, I hope you did enjoy this video. Make sure to get out and vote if you are able. I know some states don't have early voting, but if your state does have early voting, make sure to get out and vote. And if you can't right now, just make sure to vote before Election Day. It's a great way to exercise your right of expression, and it's a great responsibility and a privilege of being an American. So again, thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.